Hello, everyone, and welcome to Session 3D, Retaining Staff, Practices for Excellence. This is Allison, and I'll be your technical support for this session. A few quick housekeeping items before we begin. First, I want you to know that this session is being recorded. The views, opinions, and content expressed in this presentation and discussion do not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, or policies of the Center for Mental Health Services or the Center for Substance Abuse Treatment, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, or the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. So much, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Andrea and Will.
Thank you, Allison. Good morning, everyone. This is William Longinetti, Public Health Advisor with SAMHSA. Thank you all for joining us today in the third session of the Program Management track. We chose to include this session in this track as retaining staff is a need that is endemic to community-based organizations and especially grant-funded programs. And I know that many of the grantees I've worked with in the TCE HIV grant program have at times experienced some challenges with this issue. So we hope that you will be able to apply the information shared in this session in your own agencies and in your own programs going forward. Andrea?
Thank you, Will, and I agree with everything that Will said. I think this has been an issue that has come up frequently with a lot of our grantees, especially choosing the right staff and then keeping them once they're hired can often be a challenge. So I'm really looking forward to our speakers, James Sacco and Diana Williams, to impart some of their thinking in this area, and hopefully they will give you tips that will help you as you proceed forward in your organization. So thank you and enjoy the workshop.
Thanks, Andrea and Will. Hi, everyone. My name is Liz Burden, and I have the honor of serving as moderator for you all today. Just a reminder that if you have questions that you'd like to ask the presenters as we go, please type your questions in the All Questions chat box that is to the bottom left. But we also do encourage you to chat with one another and ask questions of one another in the public chat, which is in the center of your screen. That will help us to engage everyone in the conversation today. We have two broad goals, as Andrea and Will talked about, describing the characteristics of an organizational culture where people want to belong, and discussing the factors and motivations beyond economic ones that increase employee satisfaction and contribute to retention. So with that, we'd like to know a little bit more about why you chose this particular session and what needs to happen for your time to be well spent, or what will make a win for you. So we love for you to type in the public chat what's some of the information that you'd like to hear about retaining staff, hiring and keeping staff, and we can use that then. The presenters will be able to use that as we move along. So take a minute and tell us what would be helpful for you to hear in the session. We're going to start with Diana Williams, who is going to tell us about retaining staff, why people stay or go. Diana, they took out your bio slide. Okay. Diana is a project manager with Altarm Institute. She happens to be my boss as well, and one of the best bosses that I have had across my lengthy career. So she knows quite a bit about retaining staff and why people stay. So please welcome Diana.
Thank you, Liz, and such a kind introduction. This is one of my favorite topics because I know how important it is. I am a team developer. That's important to me, and actually being in a workplace that I like to go to is important to me because we spend so much time here. So I'm excited to talk to you all today. I hope that you gained some tips about recruitment and retention as we move forward. I wanted to start with, if you could put in the chat box some ideas when you think about your very worst job ever, and we all have had one. I've had a couple. What were your pain points? What were the things that really were pushing you to think about leaving? So you don't have to name a name of anyone or any place, but some characteristics that were painful in a place. One of my examples is a place where the leadership was very dictating, not encouraging. So that was one for me. I see from Lindsay, the boss was never around. Dude kept stuff to himself. I love that. Finances were quite inadequate. Yes, these are great. Micromanagement of staff. Yes, thank you. Then if you can switch gears and now think about the best place you've ever worked, place that you really enjoyed going to, it really charged you up to be there. What made you love it? What were some things that kept you there? And maybe the pay wasn't fabulous, but you really liked the environment, right? Creativity was encouraged. Meaningful work, yes, I can relate to that too. A supportive environment, flexibility, great teamwork, yeah, these are awesome. A sense of ownership, exactly right. And when I looked at the workforce development statistics, did you know that 3 million Americans quit their job each month? That's a lot. And that tells us a lot about retention, doesn't it? But the top 3 reasons were not about money. They were about poor onboarding, a lack of clarity of job duties, and then the one that was in quotes is a less than stellar boss. So how we treat people, I think, really has a lot to do with people sticking around. Also, 50% of all organizations globally have difficulty retaining their most valued employees. And why is this important? Well, it's important because it costs about 200% of someone's annual salary to replace them. 200%. So that's a lot of dough that goes out from the organization every time they are trying to replace somebody that they've trained. Yeah. So now I'm going to the next slide. So what causes employees to stay or leave? I know that you know many of these, and we saw them in your list, but feeling engaged, feeling professional development, job satisfaction. Somebody said feeling like it was meaningful work, feeling that they felt essential to the team, and teamwork. And it's important to know these things about your area, about your organization. It's important to recognize these areas so that you can either work on the things that aren't going so well or praise the organization and feel good about the things that are going well there. The everyday experience, so your working relationships, like somebody said flexibility was really important. Well-being, so well-being of us personally and professionally, our emotional well-being. Do we feel good about where we're going? Yes, a safe place, especially if you're serving clients with trauma, absolutely. And feeling a part of the culture. And then, of course, there is the salary. That is a piece of it, but is not all of it. The reward, sometimes it's an attaboy, how we're interacting with people. And how does it feel to be a part of that culture? All of those things are important. Ways organizations can address or enhance these factors. So in the psychological growth needs, we have training and development. And one of the things that the workforce development stat said was that people left because they didn't feel like the onboarding was helpful. And I think that also includes not feeling like they understood what the job was once they got into it. A lack of clarity about the job duties, so that's real important, that training. Also, continued development of the people. Assignments and secondments, and secondments is a term that was made up, right? But it means, so not only is it whatever the primary work is, but kind of what the other job duties are. Those things are important. Job redesign, and I see this kind of, I try to do this with the people that I work with, is how do we make this interesting and engaging for the folks that we're hiring? So yes, the job is this. The job is, say it's an intake job. So yes, the job is intake, but is there a way to make it interesting for the person doing the job so that they feel good about what they're doing? Maybe it's being a part of the team discussion so they can see what happens after intake. It's important to think about how that person is relating in that job. And that folds right into mentoring. Very important and very near and dear to my heart. Mentoring is very important. And then the everyday experience. A lot of people in the chat have talked about team building and the importance of team building, which I do think harbors and develops trust. Praise is important, not just from the boss. The boss is important, but to one another. And this is a way that we develop the culture to be friendly and enticing and exciting to be a part of. The work-life balance, how are people getting out on time? Are they working 16-hour days? Those kinds of things are important to folks when they're coming for a job. And is that the culture? Is the culture that people stay really, really late? Or is the culture that they get out at a reasonable time? And then for me, I like to encourage people when there is a deadline or something that we're all working on, are people willing to jump in and help? So that Joe doesn't have to stay till 10 o'clock. Maybe with a couple people's help, he can get out at 7, right? So, that kind of culture is important. And then, of course, the increased pay, improved benefits, promotional opportunities. A lot of people we lose because they don't feel like there's anywhere for them to go in the organization. So it's important to keep open dialogue with folks to help them discuss where it is they're wanting to go, what they're wanting to do next, to make sure that the organization is discussing professional growth. So there are intrinsic and extrinsic rewards, and we've been talking about this. Most of us are motivated by intrinsic rewards. Interesting, it's challenging work, it means something. But the extrinsic rewards are important as well. But salary is only one of the 16 reasons that people leave a job. So we're going to talk about that. Jim is going to talk more about intrinsic motivators here in a little bit. So I'm just going to focus on the intrinsic, even though we're saying that that is not major importance, it still is important. So things like, I did have a boss once that would give out challenge coins, and he gave these out when someone did a yeoman's job at something. And the idea was, and I'm sure if you worked in criminal justice or in the military, you've heard of these challenge coins before, but it was a big deal to receive a challenge coin from the boss. It meant that you had done a really good job, and then it was your job to pass that on to somebody later on that had done a really good job. So those kinds of things are like gold stars, and although when I say it to you now, it sounds kind of silly, they really do work. And people would work really hard for those challenge coins because it was a way to be recognized that I had done a good job. Of course, money is an extrinsic motivator. Rewards, I was just talking about that. Yes, fear of punishment is definitely an extrinsic reward. We hope that you don't have to go through that much. Fear of failure. And then there is competition, and I've seen this work in job places too, where teams kind of are competing for the greatest idea, the greatest progress on a project. Those are extrinsic motivators. So we're talking about the organizational climate. Here again, put your thinking cap on and answer me in the chat, please. Is your organizational culture one that people want to be a part of? Do you consider it a healthy working place? What is the culture like? Why is it important to you? How How do the executive leadership treat you? How's the everyday feel of the office? I know it's not a simple question. Just give me some ideas about what you're thinking. Culture is different, and it's important in different values for each person, but it's very important to understand what your culture is. And it's funny how we do adapt to the culture, isn't it? When I first started at this job, everybody drank a lot of water. I know this is silly, but it was a culture thing. And so all of a sudden I was carrying a water bottle around and drinking water all the time. It was just part of the culture. And I think it spoke to the healthiness, people trying to be healthier. So, and also starting new and healthier behaviors, walking at lunch. Some people do that as a group. So knowing your culture is important, and feeling like you're a part of it can help to keep people around in your organization. Let's see, I love where I work. I need to work where I feel continually challenged and appreciated. Open door policy with staff. They receive recognition. Love this. Family type environment, supportive, transparent, fun. Yeah, water too, thank you. Yeah, poor communication from the top, it's a bummer. Yep. Critical to clients and staff, left those really improved. Oh, yep. Having the right people around, absolutely. Bonding over lunch, yep, I used to hang out with people at lunchtime too. And you have to be careful, because you can, if folks start to get negative, you can get pulled into that culture too. So it's important to know what your culture is and what part of it you want to be in. You have to make some conscious decisions. All this is important when we're talking about an organization, because when you are starting to reach out to people about coming to work in your organization, you want to be able to talk to them about your culture. And it's one of the questions when I'm interviewing people that I get a lot. What is the culture like here? And so being able to verbalize what that means and what that is, and and be honest about things as you can be. I know you don't want to scare people off if you're not in a very good culture, but it's important to have those conversations, because this is important to people. Understanding the characteristics and magnitude of the workforce problem. When you're starting to look at who you want to hire and who you want to bring into the organization, it's important to start planning that before it's a crisis. Understand what I'm saying? So before you have to hire just to fill a spot, and this happens a lot in organizations, it's okay to be thinking about who and what and how you want to fill positions before they're needed, so that it's not done hastily at the last minute. So understand the magnitude of the workforce problem, meaning what is it that we as an organization need? This is the question. What is it we need? Rather than just filling a hole with a body, which happens quite a bit, what is the thing we really want this person to have? Develop some innovative strategies to attract a broad array of candidates. So with young people coming into the workforce, and we want to attract young people and me and you and all the different ages, but we have to be up on the newest things, and one of that is social media. And there are a lot of young people. I have daughters in their 20s who are checking social media about, Glassdoor, and getting opinions about things. So it's important to be able to have our reach out in the social media area to attract those young people as well. We want to be careful to be looking at the qualities and competencies when we're hiring. We don't want to just fill the space. We want to have somebody who's going to bring what we need to the organization. We want to have programs and training programs so people do feel connected and they do feel like they understand what's being asked of them. I'm going to go through some of these a little faster, right? So strategies to address the recruitment challenges. We have to be very clear about what the opportunity is. So when we're recruiting, we want to know what it is we're looking for. the organization is part of the equation. So I want to be able to sell not just this intake position, but why do you want to come work for my company? Because we are very flexible, because we're family friendly, because we get out on time, or we help each other to get out closer to time. So the importance of the company culture. So we're not just selling the opportunity, we're selling us as an organization. And what will it mean for the candidate to come join our organization? Well, we are very well known in the community, so when you put this on your resume, it's going to look really good. So those kinds of comments and those kinds of requirements. So when we're interviewing, when we're talking to people about our opportunity, we need to treat the candidates like customers. We need to be friendly and kind and open and answer good questions. We need to understand the cost benefit of every hire. Like I said to you, to lose somebody costs us about 200% of their salary. So that's a lot of money going out the door if when I hire, I can't keep those people in-house. Need to think about, can I hire somebody freelance to do this work, or is it a full-time position? Because if it's freelance, it may mean that I don't have to do the whole benefits thing, and I can get the work done that I need to get done. So having office space that attracts millennials is funny to me, but it does matter. It's very important to them that it's kind of sleek, it's open, it's light. There was a place I worked at with in the basement, and that was not a fun place to enter. So we had to put a lot of lighting in there and some plants and things like that. So it's important to be aware of the surroundings and how attractive they are. Here's some recruiting strategies. Using niche job boards. So that means, like, if I'm looking for an intake person, that I go and I look for some job boards that are specific to mental health, substance abuse, and maybe some of the social work schools. So looking for places where people that do this job would be looking. And it does take some thought. Also, don't forget to leverage your own employees, like especially the good ones. So if the employees have done a really good job and you like what they do, they many times have very high-functioning friends that may be looking for a job. You don't know, but I think it's important we do think of it. We forget about that our own employees can give us some great ins with people. Also, people that used to work at our organization and they left on good terms, there's no reason not to reach out to them and find out if they have anybody that they know of that might be looking for a job. So these are other recruiting strategies. Let's see. My time is getting limited, so I want to give you the good stuff. Of course, in the process of hiring and keeping people, we want to hold people accountable for their work and remove some of the controls so they feel like they have a say in what's happening. Give people responsibility. Folks said that in the chat, that it was important to feel like they had say in the work. Enable people to take on new roles. And help folks to become more expert in their areas or new areas. One of the things can get people really excited about their job is if they are learning new things and how to implement new things. So these are all ideas to look at recruiting and retention of your areas. And then I wanted to just end by saying that you all are leaders, and we've had bosses and leaders, and folks are drawn to leaders. So just to think about, if your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, and do more, and become more, then you are a leader. So thank you, and thank you for being with us today. I'm going to hand it back to Liz.
Thanks so much, Diana. I just want to remind everyone, if you have some questions for either Diana or Jim, who's coming up next, we will have some time at the end for question and answers. You can put them in the all questions box. So what are some practices for motivation? Jim Sacco, who has provided mental health and substance use disorder services since 1980, is going to share with you some thoughts and some tips on best practices for motivation. Please welcome Jim.
Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to be here and really appreciative of people making time and What I also love is people checking in the chat box, and please, Diana and I both want to encourage that. I'm an old school trainer. I love being in a real live room with real live people, and so one of the disadvantages of the technology is we don't get connected. So you keeping us honest and sharing where you are helps us. So anyway, thank you for the opportunity. Thanks for everybody making time. And I'm supposed to talk about what we do beyond company cars and big fat checks. And I start with the interpersonal relationship. I go back to all the beautiful things you guys talked about when you talked about what it was when you had a good job relationship, a job that worked well, and just the traits that you came up with, the things that you thought of. I really thought I'm just reminding a lot of you who've had a good experience about what good bosses do. I guess part of what I hoped, and I think Diana would echo this as well, part of what we hope is that you'll use today as a chance to do some reflection on your own practice. And from my perspective, it's great to get some free CEUs and great that your SAMHSA project officer sees you on the call. I also think if education works well, it's a chance for you to reflect. And so I just at the start of the thing would say, how about a couple questions? What do you do well as you think about what good leaders do? And I think most importantly, what are one or two things you can enhance? Again, if education works well, it gives you a chance to pause and think about it and make your own goals. We're not going to, if you want to type that in the public chat, you can, but I think that reflection and personal goals is how we get there. So again, what do you do in terms of being a supportive supervisor? Starts with praise and recognition. I think the most basic thing we can do is think about, are we expressing gratitude to the people that do work for us? As I thought about and really read into those comments about the terrible supervisor, things like being neglected, not being appreciated, keep coming up. It's as simple as saying thank you and offering acknowledgement. And when we're busy and when we're managing multiple tasks, it's easy to forget that. Thinking about people's strengths. I use this term deliberately. I don't know if anybody has written a book on strengths-based supervision. Maybe I'll retire and do that at some point. But what I was thinking about as we talk about creative supervision, about figuring out, Diana did some nice stuff about thinking about who's on your team and being creative. Where you can, what struck me was as we in our clinical work think about a strengths-based approach to client services. How about if we use that same frame and thought about building on the strengths of our staff and using that as a supervisor? The next bullet, I think everybody's charged with setting performance goals and providing, praise for accomplishment. The key that I'd point out is doing that collaboratively. I mean, there's a way in which we can move from performance assessment that's always punitive or that somehow has a threatening tone to an opportunity to promote professional growth and development, to solidify the relationship with our employees. But it really starts, that word collaboratively setting goals is really deliberate. It really is, again, about thinking outside the box, not using the same personnel management form to deal with everybody. And the last reminder there, where you can, is there a way to separate clinical supervision from am I going to get fired or promoted or do I get the raise? I know that in smaller agencies, those are often coupled. I do think that in order to get better as a clinician, being able to be vulnerable, being able to say, I don't know what the heck I'm doing here. Obviously, if I can do that in a place where that person is not also charged with hiring and firing and my job performance ranking, that would be enormous. If you are boxed in, the challenge for you is to think about how you separate your roles, how you minimize during clinical supervision, because if I have to talk about my struggles, my vulnerability, where I feel stuck, it's going to be hard to do. So in terms of the idea of the relational aspects, I want to focus on the question of what a coach does. Many of you have been coached, and I guess what I want to do, if you'll go in the chat box here, if we move from I'm the boss, I'm the supervisor, to I'm taking a view of my role as a coach with the people I'm working with. What would that mean? What would coaching do? And again, if you've had a good coach, if you have been in sports or music or somewhere where someone's coached you, what qualities, what traits, what does a coach do to inspire, to motivate? If you'll take a minute, throw those in the chat box. Fran Bash is trying to be a nicer boss to her team. Thank you, Lindsay. Yeah, inspire, do. Good feedback. Thank you, Diana. Modeling, teaching, beautiful. Pushes you, beautiful. Self-reflection. Shared vision. Thank you, Fran. Great. Morale, beautiful. Listening to understand. Wow, if I had a highlighter on this thing, listening to understand. I'm just struck by how many things we do well clinically. If we're good clinicians, how much of this you can bring to being a supervisor. If you come to supervision from a clinical background, I'm looking at these and thinking, wow, we should know about these if we're good. Empathic listening, thank you. Holding people accountable, Sheena, absolutely. This is not all about TLC, and I thank you for that giving people responsibility and accountability, that speaks to our role, from my perspective, that speaks to our role of keeping client service in mind, that ultimately we are charged with making sure that that we're delivering the best service we can, and that accountability to people. Beautiful suggestions. When to do the work, absolutely. Selena, I always joke, I say, there's some bosses going to go back to their office and write an email saying pick up the magazines in the lobby or clean the toilet when it would have taken 30 seconds to straighten the magazine themselves, but they had to go ahead and document. Doesn't assume the position. Beautiful. You guys got it. Exactly. Some ideas about what else good leaders do. Diana touched on this. I think it's really important where you're boxed in a place where you can't offer people unlimited salary. You're trying to retain good people. If you start early in the relationship saying, I want to help you grow, that part of our conversation as my supervisor is to think about my professional growth. Again, I think this was embedded in some of the things you talked about when you talked about good job. But what are your goals? Train people to grow out of their jobs and into yours. Oh, that's a hard one to swallow. But let's face it, if I'm doing well, I see an opportunity to grow. I think one of the bad job things that I didn't see that I would just add is where you feel like there's no room in the organizational structure to move. And when you feel boxed in, you've done what you can. So ask about my goals. Use internal opportunities. I think we all think that training has to mean flying someone to a $400, $800, $1,000 conference, but where can you provide opportunities internally? What are free and low cost? There's people around town that are doing workshops, that are doing stuff. You may have expertise internally. The other thing, as someone who makes my living as a trainer, please stop making training being mandatory and torture. I promise, as the trainer, people come in arms crossed for the mandatory training, viewing training as reward and celebration. One of the basic ways we do that is we make some muffins at the start of the day, or we get some lunch brought in, or we do something to say this is a training day. And again, the difference from me at the front of the room, and I would argue the difference for learners when they're forced to go to mandatory training and sit there, no water, no snacks, no nothing, versus somebody's thought this is a day to celebrate, and I see I've got a bunch of Alabamians on the call. We Southerners know how to do a training. I'm going to tell you right now. In Alabama, they bring all the snacks in the morning. They lay them out. There's a crock pot of some kind of cheese dip or Velveeta, salsa, whatever, and at one time they put venison sausage in it, whatever. But thinking about what training is and how that feeds into fostering team. And then make sure you know what your folks' CEU and licensure requirements are. If I've got to have a certain kind of supervision, then help me get that so that I can move forward. Let's do a poll here. I want to understand from you, so that those of you who are saying, how do I get better as a supervisor, think about your own professional development. And so the poll just popped here at the bottom. Pick one of the radial buttons for you in terms of your work history. Has working or shadowing somebody as a preceptor, the academic courses you've taken, internal training opportunities in your agency, conferences, workshop, or self-study online. Everybody just take a minute. Where has your best professional growth come from? Because our hope is that you'll leave this with some ideas about how you get better. Hopefully our SAMHSA project officers on the call are going to be mailing out a stack of signed checks for you to continue professional development for your team. They haven't promised that, but my hope is that there'll be some signed checks. Where could we? Another 30 seconds. Wow, it's clear. Very interesting. Alice, I'm gonna call time. It's really clear. You guys, let's show the results. You guys are telling me that the way people grow is shadowing or working with a preceptor. That finding those mentoring relationships as a supervisor, you fostering those mentoring relationships may be something really important that you can build into your supervisory practice to meet your needs of folks. The second one is conferences, workshops, although I suspect some of that was just going to fun places and the other things. Very interesting. Thank you for reminding us all. So we've talked a lot about team and fostering team, and again, much of this was already touched on. I think you being clear about what's expected is enormously important in terms of creating a team. If we're all on the same page, the most functional work teams I've worked with understand what they're doing, their values line up. I'm a big fan of having fun, and when I think about places I like to go, that's why I'm picking on the poor project officers. That's why I'm picking on poor Fran. Why not have fun, even if we're doing a webinar, even if we're having a CEU opportunity? People need feedback, and again, as you talked about bad jobs, where you don't get any feedback on what you're doing, where you don't really understand. The craziest place I've ever worked, I didn't understand what was expected, and I got no feedback. So it was the double whammy, sort of what the heck would success look like, and I get no feedback, so how would I know the difference even if I was doing it right? This last bullet is important, respect and collaboration. And again, the opposite of collaboration is the micromanagement that you spoke about. People said, I don't have any chance. People want to be seen as smart. And again, we're talking about how you retain smart people. Several of you had questions about working with peers and supporting peers, and I guess I think that's especially important. One of the things we've got to acknowledge is there's a way that systems and supervisors can be disrespectful of our peer staff and recovery advocates, whatever you call them, recovery associates. And I just think really being mindful about making sure your system and your practice respects the gifts of peers and supports recovery coaching while understanding whatever professional or organizational limitations they bring. I think I'm going to say it, we pimp peers. Yes, I did. We pimp peers without real commitment. And so, yeah. So other thoughts about work team? We talked a lot about atmosphere. Diana did a beautiful job of that. Everybody's second bullet, everybody's had the job who said, oh, my open door policy, I'm always open. Is that true or not? That's the question. I think one of the craziest people I ever worked for said that, oh, my door's always open. But when you did, her head spun around like the devil daughter from The Exorcist, sort of spun on her neck, and clearly didn't want to be bothered by anybody when she could be typing emails and doing something. So I really think healthy work teams allow communication. Support, we've talked a lot about that. And staff input is valued. If I had a highlighter, I would valued. Again, everybody, I just did a consultation, I guess I can say this, with an organization. And the worker bees said, we're pimped all the time. They say, oh, yeah, here's another poll. The results are everybody's unhappy. And they do nothing. And 6 months later, another poll, and are you happy? And nothing is done. So let's think a little bit about what gets in the way. I've got a set of polls here. What I'd like you to do, if your last name starts with A through H, I'd like you to tackle that first question. If your last name starts with I through R, I'd like you to think about the second question. And my folks whose last names are S through Z, I'd like you to do the last one from left. What that means is what organizational, operational barriers get in the way of successful teams. One would be just bureaucratic, whatever, where there's so many levels of bureaucracy. I'll give you one to get you started. Second question, what interpersonal barriers, and I'd argue the supervisor that just, somebody said, I've got a crabby boss. Tanisha had a crabby boss. Well, a crabby boss is not going to do this. And what little, and I've got ego, exactly. They already started. What individual level barriers? So just another minute, if you'll break those down by organizational versus interpersonal. In overbearing procrastination, Santos Torres says, me. Limited budgets, yeah, just not enough money. All the rules, yeah, thank you, Maureen. Again, some people make things bureaucracy, not making supervision a priority or team building a priority. Thank you. Funding, again, part of what Diana and I were charged with was what can you do without a lot of money. Multiple contracts, yeah, especially, where I was somewhere else and people complained about I've got 5 jobs, lack of autonomy, completing regulations, yeah, and of course, all the federal funders, software talks to each other and the projects officer talk to each other. I can't make that joke. Defensiveness, attitude, strong person, insecurity. Ooh, Michael Pickering, you better teach this next webinar because I think it's the insecure leader that I'm worried about. Beautiful. Procrastination, overbearing, inconsistency. Look at that list on the right, guys. And again, ooh, Kimberly, I'm not having no gossip in my store. I'm putting you out if you're gossiping. And what it means is, as a supervisor, you got to play dumb. You got to pretend you didn't hear what you just heard, because you better not say, girl, she was just in here, and here's what I know, her husband's cheating on her, whatever. You need to play dumb. Favoritism. Thank you. The interpersonal stuff. One more minute, because I'm running up against the clock. These are awesome, y'all. These are awesome. Beautiful. Rigidly defined roles, overboard disrespect, thank you. Lack of transparency, people not engaged, thank you. Beautiful, guys, this is awesome. I'm going to do these last few slides, and we are rocking. So what do you do as a leader? Alice, if you can keep these going, these are, I'm sorry, never mind. What do we do to, thank you. We're going to keep these live. There's so much going on. Who cares what I'm saying? This is way better than anything I got going. So last few slides. So what do successful leaders do? Someone touched on this in the chat. I just want to say it. With all the pain you see, you better create a safe environment. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. Collaboration, support, fostering vision, thinking outside the box. Diana and I have both talked a good deal about that. How do we support a healthier workplace? I'm going to give you some ideas. First, it means you saying we're out of the business of unhealthy helping. I know that I'm not the only person on this call who came to this work to save the world, and I think we know, our staff, some of us know in our hearts that we put on our Wonder Woman or Superman, and that actually is unhealthy helping. So we stop saving the world. We stop reinforcing people who are being Wonder Woman, who are martyring, just modeling good limits, assertive communication, healthy boundaries, all those ways we become healthier helpers. Second important healthier workplace I want to emphasize, and again, somebody in the chat said this earlier, we've got to understand you're dealing with a lot of trauma. I was at a site, a SAMHSA site in Houston, and it was women, HIV positive, and substance use, and I thought everybody in this place is a trauma survivor. I had that sense, and whether your population is 70, 80, 90%, you need to be mindful of and preventing secondary trauma. That is what happens when people work with lots of trauma. So understand what's going on. Talk about trauma-informed systems of care. Make sure you openly discuss, address, and deal with the primary prevention for secondary trauma. Watch out for people that are burned out, that have caregiver fatigue. There's your symptoms there. If this is something you're concerned about, print this, think of your staff. If this is you, I want you to get healthier, part of my job. Other signs of compassion fatigue. Is this you? Is this someone you're working with? Last reminder, here's what you do about it. I think it starts with kindness to self. And if you want to print this, stick it under everybody's door on your team. I think that would be an awesome way to start. Accept where we are, understand people near us may not get it. You know, one of the things I often say is, where can we get support from peers at work? Because I sometimes come home and my spouse looks at me like I'm crazy. And so the role of support at work, the role of fostering communication and supervision, is there's something about other people on the front line. Make sure you are getting support from people who validate your feeling. Listen to your peers and others. Get outside yourself. Clarify your boundaries. A lot of compassion fatigue, from my perspective, goes back to that previous slide about unhealthy helping. And we've got, I don't know, 1 or 2 codependents who've come to the work that you guys are doing. Nobody on this webinar, but you can all think of a staff person or 2. Express what you need out loud. Make positive change. You know, again, I look at this looks a lot like an academic version of the Serenity Prayer, to accept the things I cannot change. Courage to know the difference. So with that, I think Diana's going to step right back up, and we are delighted to handle any questions about recruiting, retaining.
So this is Liz, and there are a couple. I wanted to start with one that came up early on that you touched on, Jim, but maybe we have some time to go a little bit more in depth on strategies to support and retain qualified peer recovery coaches. So Jim touched on it a little bit. Diana, are there other thoughts that you have about strategies for peers?
Thank you for the question. This is a very hot topic in our field right now because there are so many peers coming into the field, and we certainly want to keep them and be respectful of them and have them be a part of our work. So thank you for the question. My answer would be, 1, open communication, being willing to be patient, to listen. So I'm not sure it's any different than anyone else. Probably the difference would be that we are finding these folks need very clear guidelines about what's expected of them. They don't want to make a mistake. Most of us don't. So they want to be sure that they understand what the expectation is. And then touching base with them, at least weekly, if not, every day would be great, but I know that it's hard to do that. But at least weekly, and having some sort of peerness, meaning that they have other peers that they can talk to and encourage them and support them. So I hope that's helpful.
Thanks, Diana. I'm also going to put in the chat a resource that was developed for behavioral health organizations here in just a second. We had a second question from Eugenia for both Jim and Diana. We often hear that younger employees or candidates are motivated differently than the older workforce. Can you elaborate on that a little bit, or give your thoughts on whether that's accurate or not?
I'll start. This is Jim. I think it is true. Absolutely. I was at a consultation with public health personnel, HR people, and this woman came in and said, look, you are dealing with a different workforce, different needs, different. One of the things I remember that she touched on was a different need for praise and support, a different need for engagement. Again, some of what engagement in the process, more information about the why than we're used to. These are employees for whom do it because I told you isn't going to work. And again, some would argue because they've been given a blue ribbon every time. Again, my own bias coming up, given a blue ribbon every time they've shown up. They want a blue ribbon for showing up. And and what she said that stuck with me is, as much as we may find it difficult to change our processes to meet the needs of younger workers, if we're going to get them and retain them, we have to be willing to supervise them differently. And there was a hush over the room of public health HR people, but I think she's right. I mean, the workplace is changing, and a bunch of people over 50 are thinking about doing something else, and so you got to think about new ways to supervise.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is my own experience getting those people to be a part of the organization in the first place is its own challenge. So they want it to be interesting. They want it to be exciting. All these things are good things. I want it to be exciting and interesting too. And they do care about what it looks like. They care about how it feels. The culture is very important. Many of them want to be able to have a life after work. And they do care about what it's going to mean to their resume. I get that question a lot, like how is this going to impact what it looks like the next time I'm looking for a job? So that's an interesting question. I don't think that's one I would have thought of to ask. So yeah, the bringing them in the first place can be the first challenge, and then keeping them, and they keep me on my toes, I have to say, because they ask the really hard questions, many times without much filter, because they really want to get to the heart of the matter. So it is a different conversation, but it sure has been a growing experience for me, too.
Thank you both. We also have a question from John, wondering about some strategies for maintaining staff as a grant under which those staff may have been funded comes close to its end.
Mm-hmm.
I just did something with this, and I guess I'll start if you don't mind. I think what I would say is communication, information, exclamation point, exclamation point. I think people know what's going on, want to understand, is there a possibility? If not, I think beginning the conversation early about the reality, is there carry forward, what are the implications for me? And acknowledging that different employees can tolerate different levels of anxiety. That one of the things I think is really important is that you recognize some folks cannot wait till the last month and get serious about it. Like some folks just can't live with that uncertainty. And so the conversation is, here's what we know. Obviously, if there's room to continue, if there's other new funding opportunity, but to really have some frank conversations with people about uncertainty, about their personal ability to keep working with uncertainty, and I think encouraging people to move on when they need to move on.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jim. I totally agree. I just lived this about 6 months ago, and it is all about honesty and communication and supporting people wherever they are. And for some of the folks that I worked with, it was helping them to feel okay about looking and moving on, and for other folks they wanted to stick it out to the very end, which was great. But a lot of it had to do with just being honest, and as their supervisor, if you're in this position, to just be real, you know, not to panic. Nobody needs to panic, but just to be real and honest about what's happening, and for you, take care of you in it so that you can be a solid, comforting force with your staff rather than everybody running around like chickens with their heads cut off about it. So important to take care of you in that, and that might be yoga every night. I don't know, whatever it is for you, but you've got to take care of yourselves.
With that, we'll close the questions. If you have more, please feel free to put them into all questions. We will be collecting them and feeding them